different personalities involved.
Then Lolita doesn't have this mamatva then.
Mm-hmm.
Lolita
Prema itself has mamata in the sense of possessiveness of Krishna because they're attracted to Krishna. So everybody's attracted to Krishna in prema. But within the Madhurya Rasa in particular, there's a great possessiveness of Krishna. Of course, we see even Yasoda is great possessiveness of Krishna also. But among the gopis also we find possessiveness. So it's not just in Madhurya Rasa, and other qualities and other types of prema also we find possessiveness.
And, I think in Govinda Lilamrita there is a pastime when one gopi, met with Krishna and Krishna wanted to enjoy the gopis, but gopi said, no, you will be, you should enjoy with Radha only. I'm just a helper. I want to, help you to meet with Radha. But Krishna wanted to enjoy the gopis. I think it's mentioned in Govinda Lilamrita maybe somewhere.
Well, in other words, the members of Radha's group, they generally assist so that Radha can meet with Krishna, Krishna can meet with Radha, so they generally act as their assistants.
Yes.
Nevertheless, Krishna also has personal enjoyment with all of them, just as he has with Chandravali and others as well. So, but in terms of their group, they support the leader.
Different roles played with the siddhas. It is their own desire or it is Krishna's wish?
Mm-hmm. Well, we can say it's mutual. They have their own personalities and the way they want to serve, and Krishna responds to that and supports it.
Usually Radha and Chandravali, they don't stay together. But in Satsang, I think this is the only temple we have alongside Krishna, both Chandravali and Radha together in Utsava. Rukmini and Krishna, because you mentioned that Rukmini is Radha and Satyabhama is...
Yeah. So?
No, I'm just saying this is the only temple where we have both of them together, though they are opposite.
Yeah, because we had those deities previously. Of course, it's more like Rukmini and Satyabhama, I guess you can say, who are, let's say, the expansions of Chandravali and Radha.
Maharaj, these intimate pastimes of Krishna on the Rasalila and Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan, Nama Sankirtan is non-different. And what should be the understanding of that, Maharaj? There is no difference between Mahaprabhu's Nama Sankirtan and Rasalila.
Well, the Nam Sankirtan at its highest levels we see here, we find in the Kirtan of the gopis, etc., they are singing in separation. So Nam Sankirtan itself is also a form of devotional service in separation from the Lord, even in sadhana, what to speak of in prema. So one calls out to the Lord, and it's the most powerful way of advancing and then finally meeting Krishna. And then in the spiritual world we see Nam Sankirtan also functions to bring about the appearance of Krishna. So it's an expression of separation and longing to meet Krishna in separation. And of course we find the greatest separation is expressed by the gopis, as we find here before the Ras Leela. So therefore the Kirtan acts to produce the Ras Leela. Well, as I said the other day, directly meeting, in other words, we can say the gopis don't have to meet Krishna. He's in their heart. But they long to have pastimes with Krishna directly, so therefore they want to meet him and see him directly, even though he's in the name. But the name is powerful to bring about that appearance of Krishna directly. So it is said that, yes, one can internally experience the bliss of Krishna, etc., but the whole purpose of sadhana is to see Krishna. Not just to see him, of course, to serve him as well. So one wants to develop a direct relationship with Krishna and serve him in the spiritual body. So that's the goal of sadhana itself, to do that. So that's a general aspiration of all devotees. What to speak of those who already have spiritual bodies, etc. They also want to serve Krishna directly.
Maharaj, like regarding this possessiveness or mamata, so is it if sadhaka has that possessiveness for Radharani, for example, not for Krishna, but then still the sadhaka can become a gopi? Is it right understanding, Maharaj?
Well, yeah, there's different types of devotees. Some have more attraction for Radha, some more attraction for Krishna, some equal attraction for both. So there's all varieties there also.
So they can become gopi. I mean, if they have attraction only for Radha, also they can become gopi. But and also here, like gopis, they had pride, and it's a part of prema. Like the question is, Maharaj, like sometimes, I mean, by the will of Krishna also, sometimes Krishna does something. I mean, to the, like for example, Maharaj was talking about Krishna was trying to make Rukmini angry. So would Krishna do certain things which devotee doesn't like? I mean, for his pleasure. Would he do that? Would Krishna do certain activities to provoke or incite devotees for his pleasure, which devotees don't like?
Well, only in the sense of for pastimes, that's all.
Okay.
As in the case of teasing Rukmini or whatever like that. So initially she doesn't like it or whatever like that you can say, but it is only for pastimes that it happened. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Gurule Shmari Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shusri Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Canto 10, chapter 32, verse 1. Shri Sukha Uvacha Iti Gopya Pragayancha Pralapyantascha Chitratha Pravrudu Susvaram Rajan Krishna Darshana Lalasa. Sri Sukha Uvacha. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, Iti, thus, Gopya, gopis, Pragayancha, singing forth, Pralapyancha, speaking forth, Cha, and Chitrada, in various charming ways. Rurudu, they cried, Suswaram, loudly, Rajan, O King, Krishna Darshana, for the sight of Krishna, Alalasa, anchoring. Translation. Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, having thus sung and spoken their hearts out in various charming ways, the gopis began to weep loudly. They were very eager to see Lord Krishna. Then Lord Krishna, a smile on his lotus face, appeared before the gopis. Wearing a garland and a yellow garment, he directly appeared as one who can bewilder the mind of Cupid, who himself bewilders the minds of ordinary people. When the gopis saw that their dearmost Krishna had returned to them, they all stood up at once. And out of their affection for him, their eyes bloomed wide. It was as if the life air had re-entered their bodies. One gopi joyfully took Krishna's hand between her folded palms, and another placed his arm, anointed with sandalwood paste, on her shoulder. A slender gopi respectfully took in her joined hands the betel nut he had chewed, and another gopi, burning with desire, put his lotus feet on her breasts. One gopi, beside herself with loving anger, bit her lips and stared at him with frowning eyebrows, as if to wound him with her harsh glances. Another gopi looked with unblinking eyes upon his lotus face, but even after deeply relishing its sweetness, she did not feel satiated, just as mystic saints are never satiated when meditating upon the Lord's feet. One gopi took the Lord through the aperture of her eyes and placed him within her heart. Then with her eyes closed and her bodily hairs standing on end, she continuously embraced him within. Thus, immersed in transcendental ecstasy, resembled a yogi meditating upon the Lord. Purport. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur states that the 7 gopis mentioned so far in this verse are the first 7 of the 8 principal gopis whose status allowed them to immediately approach Sri Krishna upon his reappearance. The Acharya quotes a verse from Sri Vaishnava Toshini that gives the names of these 7 as Chandravali, Shamala, Saibya, Padma, Sri Radha, Lalita, and Vishaka. The 8th is understood to be Bhadra. Sri Vaishnava Toshini itself quotes a verse from Skanda Purana that declares these 8 gopis to be the principal among the 3 billion gopis. Detailed information about the hierarchy of gopis is available in Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani. The Padma Purana confirms that Sri Radha is the foremost of the gopis. Yata Radha Priya Vishnos, Tasya Kundam Priyam Tata, Sarva Gopishu Saivaika, Vishnur Achyanta Vallabha. Just as Srimati Radharani is most dear to Krishna, her bathing pond is similarly dear. Of all the gopis, she is the most beloved of the Lord. The Brihad Gautamiya Tantra also names Sri Radharani as Krishna's foremost consort. Devi Krishnamayi Prokta Radhika Para Devata. Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarva Kanti Sammohini Para. Transcendental goddess Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Sri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval, inherent potency of the Lord. Additional information about Sri Radha is given in the Rigpari Shishta. Radhaya Madhavo Devo Madhavenaiva Radhika Vibrajante Janeshu. Among all persons, it is Sri Radha in whose company Lord Madhava is especially glorious, as she is especially glorious in his. So, this chapter is about the reunion. Krishna, as described here, manifests to the gopis after they glorified him with many verses, and they began crying loudly. In response to that, Krishna made his appearance, and it's described here how he was most attractive in his yellow cloth, smiling face, and he appeared the personification of Cupid, one who can bewilder Cupid himself. So Cupid in the material world is a material devata, taking charge of love affairs, material love affairs. So it is through Cupid that people fall in love with another person, and they take that other person as most attractive and bewildering, and they will sacrifice everything for that person. So that comes under the influence of Kamadev, the material Kamadev. Of course, it is all illusory. So Kamadev himself, because he's controlling all this attractive power, is also very attractive. However, we know that material attraction, etc., is all illusory anyway. So therefore useless. Like the devatas have powers also, but ultimately material powers, so therefore useless. In comparison with the devatas' powers, Supreme Lord has, of course, much more material power because he controls whatever the devatas give. So if Varuna can give water, ultimately it is Krishna that gives the water. Or if Kamadev is inspiring love, ultimately it is Krishna inspiring that love through Kamadev, the material Kamadev. But apart from controlling all material powers, the Lord also has spiritual powers. However, unlike the material power of Kama, which is generally regarded as a type of ignorance and is criticized heavily by those interested in spiritual life. We have Kama and Krodha and Lobha, etc., as being enemies. And even in Dharma, these things have to be controlled properly. And then when one comes to the level of jnana, then one has to give up all desires, etc. So it's considered great bondage. So criticized in the material world as being a major factor in bondage. But in the spiritual world, Krishna is in control of spiritual powers, and the Kama and the spiritual world is just the opposite. Instead of being criticized, it is praised. Instead of being a cause of bondage, it is a cause of ananda. And when it reaches its highest point in the form of the love of the gopis for Krishna, that is Madhurya Rasa, then it becomes the topmost expression of bliss in the spiritual world, so the topmost thing. So here we have a glorification of Radha as being the ultimate gopi in Madhurya Rasa, expressing the highest bliss. Of course, she's also Hladini Shakti. And this is in contrast to the material world, where material Kama is condemned. So, as Kamadev is attractive in the material world because he's controlling all attraction, so Krishna is the Kamadev of the spiritual world in charge of love affairs in Madhurya Rasa. So particularly for Madhurya Rasa, Krishna is described as being more attractive than Cupid or someone who attracts even Cupid. So material desire is conquered by spiritual desire. Krishna is so attractive that even Kamadev is attracted to him. So Kamadev forgets his material powers of causing illusion, etc., when he sees the spiritual attractiveness of Krishna. However, of course, the rightful recipients or the persons who respond to Madhurya Rasa are the gopis, are the highest ones. Secondary, we have other women in Mathura and Dwarka and the queens of Dwarka, etc. The primary persons are the gopis. Therefore, Krishna is addressed as often as Kamadev, but not the material Kamadev, the spiritual Kamadev, who is in charge of ultimately Madhurya Rasa, and most attractive in that feature to the gopis. So, no wonder, it is no surprise that because of his nature as the all-blissful Swayam Bhagavan, who has all supreme qualities, he can manifest the most beautiful features which are attractive in Madhurya Rasa, and naturally the gopis will be attracted to that. So when they saw him, naturally they were very pleased and overjoyed. And of course, because he is Kamadev himself, then they were completely bewildered by that love in Madhurya Rasa. So they expressed their affection in different ways. It's described here, of course, that they rose up, and it appeared that the life heirs had re-entered into their bodies because of the way they stood up like that suddenly. And they responded to this appearance of Krishna in different ways. So one gopi is described as taking Krishna's hand in her hands. Another placed his arm on her shoulder. And another received the betel nut he had chewed. Another gopi put his lotus feet on her breasts. And then one gopi looked at him with great anger and stared at him with frowning eyebrows. So this is in great contrast to the others. And another gopi looked at him with unblinking eyes and then seemed to meditate upon him. And another took him in her heart and then embraced him internally. So this describes different types of gopis, not one gopi, but different gopis. The names are not mentioned. Just as previously, Radha's name was not mentioned, the gopi with whom Krishna disappeared and was in the forest for some time. Her name is not mentioned. So here also, no names are mentioned. But each description denotes a different quality in a gopi. So they all have different qualities. And according to that, then we can begin to identify the different natures of the gopis and then identify who's who. So in this way, the purport of Vishwanath and I think Jiva Goswami also describes how we can give the names. So obviously, the one who is the most angry is Radha, and the one who is the most compliant is Chandravali. So she was the first one mentioned there, where she just takes Krishna's hand in her hand very humbly like that. And the opposite side we have Radharani glancing at him with great anger. Of course, Chandravali is often described as being very, very compliant and very, very gentle, like Rukmini. And Radha, on the other hand, tends to be very angry in her mood and tries to control Krishna. So much more disobedient. And she often expresses her anger. So this anger is expressed in this one verse. So this is the indication of Radha. And between that, then we get different groups, supporters of Chandravali, who are also very, very compliant and soft, and accepting him, accepting his betel nut, etc. And then we have the followers of Radha, who share a similar type of mood, and they also tend to oppose Krishna and support Radha. So in this way we get a whole description of the different personalities involved. In the Ujjwal Nilamani, then there's a more systematic classification of different types of gopis according to their different types of moods and whatever. And out of this we get a great, great variety. And even within one group, like Radha's group, they're not all the same. So we have, in Radha's group, we have Lalita. She is very bold. Radharani is not so bold. Lalita is very bold, and she'll directly insult Krishna. But in support of Radha, of course. Vishaka, on the other hand, is not so bold again. So we'll find different types of gopis even within one group. So there's multiple personalities involved here, and each responds to Krishna in a certain way. And Krishna is pleased with each one. And each is satisfied with that, according to personality. However, among all of the gopis and their personalities, Krishna is most pleased with Radha. And he gives him the most satisfaction and the most bliss. So therefore we have a gradation of gopis, from the lesser to the greater to the greater to the greater, like that. So in the Rasa Leela there were 3 billion gopis, all different gradations, etc., and different qualities, etc., from the lower type all the way up to the topmost, which was Radha. So with each of these gopis, Krishna responded very appropriately, and each one was very, very satisfied. At the same time, the most bliss was manifested through the relationship of Radha and Krishna. And therefore, they become the center of the Rasa Leela and the center of the whole Bhagavatam. And of course, they are the center of the Gaudiya Sampradaya because of that. So there are various levels of Madhurya Rasa expressed through these different types of gopis, and then we have the highest of all. So though there is differences like this, it is not like the differences in the material world. So in the material world, the differences give rise to a sense of inequality, and therefore envy and jealousy and competition, etc. And therefore even in the heavenly planets, in Swargaloka, there is competition. It is sattva-gun prominently, but there is competition among the devatas because there's still material world with sattva-gun. So we have Indra at the top, and then we have others, and then there's competition among the different devatas, in spite of them being sattva-gun, etc. So in the material world, differences give rise to competition and envy, etc. So we would expect that maybe in the spiritual world, no differences. But that is so. In Vaikuntha, much less difference. Everybody is very similar. They all have 4 hands and look like Narayana. All have similar services like this. So more or less, it's equalized there, very democratic. But we see in Vraja it is quite different. There is, of course, different rasas involved: Dasya rasa, Sakya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, Madhurya rasa, and then in each rasa there's different grades also. And they all are more particularized, and we can distinguish them as individuals much more in Vraja than in other places. So there's many, many differences, obvious differences in Vrindavan. Still, there's no sense of competition and envy, etc. All of this gives rise to great taste, and Krishna is able to satisfy everybody, and the result is greater and greater bliss because of the great variety involved in the differences. So, though differences are manifested, there is no negative qualities because of the difference. Rather, it increases the bliss. Just as many people will give up difference because differences in the material world are useless, so therefore they become impersonalists. No form, no qualities, no activities, and Brahman is very peaceful. So when the impersonalist hears about form, qualities, activities, then he gets very disturbed. How can we have qualities and activities in the spiritual world? It's not peaceful anymore. In one sense, no, it is disturbing, but it is all part of bliss. So with bliss we get change and variety and increase, etc. So all this requires some differences. So we have different personalities, we have different forms, we have different pastimes. All sorts of variety is created to increase the bliss of the spiritual world. So the ultimate bliss takes place in Vrindavan, and the highest bliss with the gopis. So there we see a detailed description of the variety of personalities involved among all the different gopis. And this gives rise to greater variety in the bliss. So, still, we have, because of the differences, there is actually differences in the bliss. So one would expect maybe the people in the lower bliss would be envious of the people in the higher bliss. No. They are completely blissful in their particular situation. So those who have a dasya relationship with Krishna are very, very satisfied, and they get the highest bliss that way. So they do not envy the people who are in Madhurya Rasa or Vatsalya Rasa or Sakya Rasa. They're very, very satisfied with where they are. Right? So, therefore, each jiva is fully satisfied with whatever relationship. Why they're all different? Because they're all different. Jivas by nature are different. So here we get a variety of jivas as gopis with different qualities, etc. And each becomes satisfied. But then we have the topmost of all is Radha. Of course, she's not jiva, she is Shakti. But she is the highest form of all. And she experiences the greatest bliss of all as well. But nobody envies her. So each is satisfied with their particular type of bliss that they get in relation to Krishna. How is it possible? Because Krishna is Supreme Lord, and He can satisfy everybody. So therefore the spiritual world is full of variety, full of difference, and full of bliss. And nobody has any problem with the differences that take place there.
It was quite surprising to see that a few verses back, the gopis were mentioning that Krishna's feet is very soft, our body is very hard. But today we find that one of the gopis is taking Krishna's feet and putting on her. So it's a contrast.
Yeah. Well, actually, in that, I think the last verse it was, they expressed the fact that they were worried about his injury to his feet. So instead of wandering in the forest and getting cut with the rocks, etc., they would place his feet on their breasts. Yeah. At other times, they express the fact that their breasts are very hard and therefore maybe they'll get injured. But in that particular verse, they express that. So here, that is actually also expressed here, that one gopi actually takes his feet and puts it on her breasts.
You mentioned that the one gopi, which is Chandravali, is compliant and the other Radharani is angry. But in contradiction to the material world, the one who is angry, Krishna, is more pleased. On the other hand, Radharani is compliant and it's not so much. How to understand that?
What's that?
Maharaj mentioned Chandravali is generally compliant to Krishna and Radharani is angry. Mm-hmm. And Krishna is more pleased with Radharani than the one who is compliant. Mm-hmm. So how to understand that?
Well, that is also because there's variety. Of course, Krishna could become pleased with the compliant person also, and he is sometimes. So he meets Chandravali also and pleases her. But we can say the nature of Madhurya Rasa is that there is a certain quality there that creates tension at all times. So it's described that the path of in Madhurya Rasa is crooked like a snake. So there is always obstacle. So some of the obstacle comes from the personality of the woman. And of course we see that in the form of anger. And we'll find that this is actually part of prema. We have the different stages like sneha and pranaya, and we get man, and we get raga, and anuraga, and mahabhava. So man is one of the qualities that manifests within Madhurya Rasa particularly. that feeling of anger within love itself, anger in love, prema. So not only in Radha, it can manifest in any of the gopis as one aspect of Madhurya Rasa, but it becomes quite prominent within Radha. So why Krishna would be more attracted to this? We can say is also an aspect of Krishna, that ultimately he falls under control of his devotee. That's the nature of the Supreme Lord. And with Krishna this is even more so. So Krishna becomes under the control of his friends and whatever like this, and is very obliged to everyone. He's under the control of Mother Yasoda, he gets tied up, etc. And then he's most obliged to the gopis, and that is expressed here at the end of this chapter where Krishna answers the gopis why he disappeared, etc. And he says he's completely obliged to them. And then among the highest gopi, that is Radha, he is most under her control. So therefore, when she becomes angry, this is the most, we can say, disturbing element for Krishna. And he has to submit to her because of that. And that, of course, is the element of, we find that element is there in the Gita Govinda, etc., where separation takes place and there's anger expressed by Radha, and therefore Krishna is morose, etc. So it creates a greater variety in the pastimes. So we see that Krishna tried to make Rukmini angry, but it didn't happen. True to her character, she was very soft and everything. She was very upset, definitely, but she did not become angry. But that was his attempt to make her angry somehow, but she didn't become angry. So he just wanted to do that to, create some variety within their rasa.
So which means that the Chandravali group, they didn't participate in this type of mischievous activities like Radha's group is doing with the Lord. They're pulling him.
Her supporters, they counter whatever the Lalita and Vishaka do to get Radha to meet Krishna, and they counter that with some other tricks or whatever, in order to support their leader.
This kind of attitude of the different gopis towards Krishna, the way they approach him or the way they serve him, shows that there is different personalities every gopi has, and it also shows the amount of possessiveness one of the few of them have over Krishna. But in spiritual world, there is nothing called material gunas, where we have passion, possessiveness, or all these things. How come we experience this?
Well, we have spiritual possessiveness, so prema itself is defined in terms of possessiveness. So in the basic definition of prema given by Rupa Goswami in Nectar Devotion, it is atisai ankita, atisai mamata, ankita, very extreme possessiveness. There is some possessiveness in bhava, but in prema it becomes extreme possessiveness. Right? So which means one is very attached to Krishna. And within Madhurya Rasa also that feeling is also expressed, that there is some gopis feel I am Krishna's and some gopis feel Krishna is mine. So there is possessiveness in the spiritual world, but it's of course spiritual, because ultimately it's for the pleasure of Krishna. And it's not under the illusion. So it is all part of the manifestation of prema.
But we see in the, often the Skanda Purana is quoted, Maharaj. What is the subject of Skanda Purana? Because generally the understanding of Skanda is Kartikeya, the son of Shiva. But often we see a lot of quotations with regard to Lord Hari and his intimate pastimes.
Well, they have sections which are dedicated to glorifying Mathura or whatever like that. So in those sections generally they glorify Krishna or Vishnu, etc. Other parts are glorification of Shiva and Skanda, etc. So it's got different portions. I think it's a Dwarka Mahatmya or something there, and Mathura Mahatmya, etc. within the Purana, Skanda Purana.
Also we find similarly in Bhagavatam, Shiva is glorified, though it's dedicated to Krishna and Vishnu.
Yeah.
So it's always.
Yeah. And in fact, in some portions of the Bhagavatam, it says Shiva is supreme. He is in control of all the gunas. He is omniscient. So they attribute to him even all the qualities of Vishnu. They attribute to Shiva, and sometimes.
Maharaj,
wanted to avoid the residents of Saibia. So does this exhibition of mode is to please Srimati Radharani?
Well, yeah, just following after Radha's group. So just as Radha's group has that attitude, so some of the devotees take up that attitude also.
We have a material Kamadev and we have a spiritual Kamadev also. I think, Pradumna came as that Kamadev came as a Pradumna, something like that, that.
Yeah, so he's an expansion form also, yeah.
But that spiritual Kamadev is not different from the Krishna, correct? That spiritual Kamadev is not different from Krishna. Spiritual Kamadev is not different. Suppose we are chanting Kamagayatri, correct?
Yeah.
It's mentioning the Krishna only, correct?
That's Krishna, yeah.
It's Krishna. And what about this? What is the connection or difference between this Maya and the material Kamadev? Maya and the material Kamadev, what is the difference? Is there a link?
Well, everything is ultimately under Maya, or Prakriti, or Durga Devi, etc. She's in charge of the whole of Prakriti. Within there, then we get different Devatas in charge of certain things, right? So we have Brahma for creation, and Indra in charge of heaven, etc. And Kamadev in charge of love affairs, that's all.
But you see, expansion of the spiritual Kamadev, that whatever we see in the material world?
In a sense, yeah, a material expansion, just as the Devatas are also expansions from forms in Vaikuntha. So in Vaikuntha we have spiritual Devatas, and in the material world we have their expansions, so to speak, like that.
So you are explaining about this, the Atishayankita, means deeply rooted with Mamatva, means his mind, possessiveness. So it is there in this, what do you call this, every gopis think like that the Krishna is mind?
Well, there's different types of gopis. I am Krishna's, some gopis think like that, and others think Krishna is mine.
But we see in the character of Lolita, she always, chastise Krishna, like, no, you should go to Krishna, no one else. But she never feels that Krishna is mine. That because she's always stay with Krishna, that's why, see.
Yeah, it depends on the gopi. They're all different personalities. Just like some are soft, some are bold, some are very, very soft, some are medium, like that.